This is the third part of a three-part series. Chapters 51, 52, 53 from Canto 10, describing what Krishna did after leaving Mathura, what Krishna and Balaram did after leaving Mathura, because so far, parts 1 and 2, we haven't heard anything about Balaram, but we're going to hear about Balaram shortly. We heard that Krishna left the battlefield twice. One of the names, celebrated names of Krishna is Ranchor, he who left the battlefield, which for a Kshatriya is bad. It's adharma. Prabhupada told the story more than once about some king, and I don't recall the date, but not so terribly long ago. And the king, again, I can't remember his name, but Prabhupada gave his name. He went off to battle. And when he came back from battle, he had been defeated. And the queen heard that her husband, the king, had come back from the battle, and she withdrew. She had the drawbridge withdrawn. And so when the king arrived, he couldn't enter his palace. So he requested the guard to have the queen return the drawbridge so he could enter the palace. And the guard came back saying, the queen wants to know, who is this? And he said, I'm her husband, I'm the king so-and-so. And the guard went back to the queen and said, this is your husband, the king? And she said, no. My husband, a king, would never leave the battlefield defeated. He would die. That's not my husband. Leave the door locked, the gate closed, and the drawbridge withdrawn. Not so long ago, I forget the chronology. So this is Kshatriya code. Kshatriyas don't leave the battlefield. But Krishna is celebrated for leaving the battlefield. In the first case, he was leaving the battlefield to give honor and his personal darshan to his pure devotee, Muchukunda. And that's where we started our discussion, Muchukunda, deliverance of Muchukunda. And then the second time he ran was when he went back to the battlefield to finish all of Kalyavana's 3 million soldiers, he and Balaram, 2 against 3 million. They were all defeated, and they were gathering the valuables from the soldiers to take to Dwarka. And while he was in the midst of gathering the valuables, Jarasandha arrived. So what did Krishna do? He stopped gathering the valuables and he ran. He ran for the hills, as they say, a mountain. And he and Balaram went up the mountain and up the mountain, big mountain, a mountain as big as we've never seen before, 10 yojanas tall, or 80 miles tall. No such mountain that we're aware of. But Krishna went up the mountain. Jarasandha couldn't find him. He thought he was afraid, so he set the mountain on fire. And Krishna and Balaram jumped. It's a big jump from way up in the mountain. And waiting for them wasn't Jarasandha, it was a chariot that by Krishna's divine arrangement appeared and swiftly, within moments, took them all the way from Mathura to Dwarka, because there was some service for him, and the service for him was marrying Rukmini. So no need to fight for the 18th time Jarasandha, because that would come later. Finishing him would come later. And on the way, lo and behold, Balaram married first. Balaram's marriage to Revati, and that Revati is discussed in the 9th canto, but the marriage is not narrated until the 10th canto, chapter 51. And then comes the story of Rukmini. So 51, 52. Rukmini was the only daughter of King Bhishmaka, and she was the youngest of 6. There are 5 brothers older than her. Rukmi was the eldest, and Rukmi just happened to have a problem with Krishna. He was very envious of Krishna. A close associate of many demons. The list of demons was told yesterday. Shalva, Shishupal, Pondraka, and a host of others. They're all his buddies. And he, the story, the narration that we hear in the Bhagavatam is, Rukmini had heard from Narada Muni, because Narada Muni would visit. Narada Muni just goes where he likes and does what he likes for Krishna's service. So he informed Rukmini about Krishna. She heard from a proper source, and what she heard about him was overwhelming. Specifically mentioned in her letter to Krishna was his qualities and his beauty. And amongst his qualities are his valor in fighting. He is valorous. So she, yesterday, chapter 52, we heard her letter, and she gave her heart, and no way is she going to marry the man that her brother wants her to marry. The Damagosh was Shishupal's father's name. They're cousins. Krishna and Shishupal are cousins. No way am I going to marry that person. And if you decide not to marry me, then I'll live the rest of my life in undergoing austerities and this and that and the other thing, and however many lifetimes it takes, then please accept me. So then she makes a plan. Please come and kidnap me, because the wedding is supposed to take place tomorrow. And she gave a very clever, well thought out. She's a smart lady. She's a king's daughter, so she has the savvy of a Kshatriya family. So she knew what to do, what not to do, how to do it. And if there's some resistance, then you show your valor. And she waits. The messenger took the message. Krishna received the messenger, because the distance, it doesn't give exactly, but the distance is not far from Bhishmaka's kingdom to Dwarka. So the messenger went swiftly, delivered the message. Krishna received, worshipped him, as is due for a brahmana to be received by a kshatriya. Krishna is playing that role, as he does in other circumstances. We'll hear shortly how he receives Narada when Narada visits, how he receives Sudama Brahman, when Sudama Brahma visits, he just, how he received the Brahmana when the Brahmana came. He had no idea, externally, had no idea. He just, here comes a Brahmana, and he stopped everything. He had the Brahmana sit in his seat, and he had paraphernalia brought, washed his feet, sprinkled the water from his feet on his head to sanctify himself, and then asked what the purpose for your coming. And all of that was before even asking, hey, how's it going? What brings you here? There were formalities due to a noble person, honored person, and the Brahmana explained his reason, read the letter, and wanted to know what message to take back to Rukmini. And Krishna's reply was, I know that Rukmini has given her heart to me. I knew that before. I have also given my heart to her. Surely I will accept her as my wife. And if anyone gets in the way, they'll be finished. Please take the message back to Rukmini. I will be there, according to her plan. So, the end of the previous chapter, what we heard yesterday, Rukmini is uncertain. Life has its uncertainties. Now we were mentioning, she's the goddess of fortune. There's no question of anything other than a Leela. In Vaikuntha, there's no Leela of Lakshmi marrying Narayana. They're eternal consorts. And in this case, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is manifesting herself as Rukmini, and there's an obstacle to their being married, and that's her brother. And there's another plan to have her married to a demon. That doesn't happen in Vaikuntha. So it's very pleasant. It's excitement, and it brings chivalry, because that's part of what happens in Krishna's pastimes. Is secondary rasas are exhibited along with primary rasas. The primary rasa in this case being conjugal, Rukmini, Dwarkadish. It's nice. Maybe some of you know, Srila Prabhupada spent a fair amount of time in Los Angeles for several reasons. One is the weather's good, so he could stay, and he was able to do his translating, etc., etc. But he wanted to establish what he called his Western world headquarters. And when he personally installed the deities, he named them Rukmini Dwarkadish, because he wanted the LA temple to be very opulent, like Dwarka is opulent. Other deities, rarely, there's some exceptions, but rarely was it anything outside of Radha Krishna of some name or another. But Rukmini Dwarkadish. So Krishna's in Dwarka. He starts to make a plan, and swiftly at night, he travels at night and overnight, because all this has happened in one day. The Rukmini, the messenger, delivering the message, deciding, coming back. It's all within like 24 hours. And Krishna shows up. And she has anxiety. Maybe I've offended him. Maybe I've made some mistake. Maybe he won't accept me. But I've given my heart to him. So, that transcendental emotion was being stimulated by the pastime. Not only Krishna experiences secondary, the associates of Krishna, they also, in relation to Krishna, experience tastes of loving exchange. So that's a very important part, especially illuminated by Rupa Goswami in his explanations of pastimes in detail and sub-detail and sub-detail of the sub-detail, and very refined. Persons who have spiritual taste have very refined way of appreciating everything. Here's a little Prabhupada story. This I read. Some of you may know one of Prabhupada's disciples, female disciples, he named Yamuna. Great personality. And along with her singing, she was also very well known for her cooking. She wrote a cookbook, became an award-winning cookbook. And she tells the story that one time she wanted to get some very special rice for Prabhupada. So she requested, it was arranged, and she cooked the rice. And she offered it to Krishna, and then offered it to Prabhupada. Prabhupada took a few grains, chewed on it, and told her exactly the type of rice that it was and where it was from, just by tasting a few grains of rice. I don't know if anybody in this room can do like that. I know I can't. But his taste was very refined, as was Jamuna's. So the connoisseurs of Krishna's pastimes, they also like very much the flavors of rasa. So it's not only the pastime, but the flow of exchanges of love between Krishna and his devotees. In this case, it's Rukmini. And of course, there's others involved in these pastimes. So Rukmini is in anxiety. What's Krishna thinking? Have I offended him? Have I made some mistake? Is he going to come? What to do? No way I'm going to marry the son of Damagosh, Shishupal. No way. You know, what do you do? That morning, as Krishna arrived, the messenger also arrived, the Brahmin messenger, letting her know Krishna has arrived. That's the good news. Yay, Krishna has arrived. So that's where we ended up yesterday. So the plan was Krishna would come into the city, but she would go outside of the palace, as was family tradition, to go to the temple. There was the family deity of goddess Girija. That's where we ended up yesterday. And now it gets really exciting, the chivalry part. When devotee's determination meets Krishna's determination, you say sankalpa. When latent fire is aroused in wood, the fire bursts forth, consuming the wood. In the act of manifestation, similarly, Lord Krishna boldly predicted that Rukmini would come forth to take his hand, and that in the process the wicked kings would be burned by the fire of Krishna's determination. Now back in Dwaraka, Balaram heard. Doesn't say, somebody sent him a text message or how did he find out. But he heard about the military preparations of the inimical kings and how Lord Krishna had set off alone to steal the bride. He feared that a fight would ensue. Immersed in affection for his brother, he hurried to Kundina with a mighty army of Yadu soldiers. Now, the Acharyas describe at length. This is Yogamaya because there's other cases where the omniscience of Balaram prevails and he smiles when it looks like there's some difficulty, like when Krishna was in the coils of the Kaliya serpent. He just smiled. He's just having fun. Or when the messenger came from Kaliyagat to inform Nanda and Yashoda, come quickly. Krishna's in the Kaliya's got Krishna in his coils. They panicked. Mother Yashoda went berserk, and Balaram just smiled because he knew Krishna's just having fun. So in some cases, in most cases, the omniscience of Balaram prevails. But there's other cases where his omniscience is covered. A very nice one, nice example, is the 1 year that passed when Krishna was manifesting himself as each of the calves and cowherd boys. For that 1 year, for most of the 1 year, Balaram was oblivious that these aren't just the cowherd boys, it's Krishna giving loving satisfaction to the mothers of the boys who wanted to have Krishna as their son. So Krishna fulfilled their desire. Towards the end of the year, he started to notice this, and he started to notice that, and he started to notice other things. And so he mentioned to Krishna, is this what's going on? And Krishna smiled. So sometimes Balaram's omniscience, because he's omniscient, it's not displayed, and it's for pastime purpose. So this is one of those. I'll give two more. This one, well, I'll give the other one. The other one was when Krishna was in the mouth of the Bakasura demon. You familiar with that pastime? The duck or crane or baka was sent by Kamsa to kill Krishna. So Krishna knew Baka was one of Putana's two brothers. So Krishna allowed himself to enter the mouth, the big beak of Baka, but not beyond that. He couldn't go into his throat and anything. When Balaram, who was with Krishna at the time, and the cowherd boys saw Balaram and the cowherd boys fainted, because normally it's a role reversal. They're in difficulty and Krishna rescues them, but what to do when Krishna is in difficulty? Now previously, when Krishna was in the coils of the Kaliya serpent, no problem. In this case, his affection for Krishna overwhelmed him, which is the rasa, and he fainted, or as if fainting, he fell to the ground unconscious. So what did Krishna do? After some time, he escaped the beak of Baka. He glanced upon Balaram and the cowherd boys, and they regained their consciousness. So this is another one. This is from our acharyas. They say, Balaram had his omniscience covered by Yogamaya. Why? It was like a spike in his older brotherly affection. The older brotherly affection sometimes reaches the condition like parental affection. Like an older brother may look after a younger brother. Parental affection. Like Ram looked after his younger brothers. They're brothers, but is the older brother mood. So Balaram became worried. Other times Krishna is omniscient, no problem. no problem. But there's variety of spiritual emotion, and he was feeling, Krishna may be in difficulty. Because we heard yesterday evening, all the kings were instructed, bring your entire army, because if Krishna tries something, we'll finish him. Combined, we'll finish him. So bring all your armies. So the massive armies. Balaram knew this. So he started from Dwarka. That night, before the wedding was to take place. And then we saw this slide yesterday. Here's the ladies accompanying Rukmini to go pay their respects to the family Ishtadev, Girija. Rukmini went to the temple of Girija, surrounded by her girlfriends, the wives of the Brahmanas, and bodyguards, to offer their respects. Sure enough, in the meantime, Krishna and Balaram arrived at the entrance of Vaidarbha. All the citizens ran to see Krishna. There you see Krishna in the center, at the bottom there, and Balaram with him. So they came with their armies. Look behind them, all those elephants and big entourage. They were so eager to unite Krishna and Rukmini that they prayed to the personality of Godhead, our dear Lord, if we have performed any pious activities with which you are satisfied, kindly be merciful upon us and accept the hand of Rukmini. Krishna is not unwilling. As Rukmini proceeded toward the temple, she was silent and grave. The chivalrous princes assembled there were so overwhelmed by Rukmini's beauty that they became almost unconscious and fell from their horses and elephants. Now it's common that a princess, it happened with Subhadra as well, or Rukmini, they're not seen by the public. If they go somewhere in the public, it's in a palanquin covered. No one can see her. So for the first time, the princes, they're seeing Rukmini, and her beauty is Shri. She is all beautiful. Krishna, unconcerned with the other princes, placed Rukmini on his chariot and moved slowly away. So here's there are many nice paintings. Here she's come before the deity. On the left side, there's her friends. In the center, there's the small shrine and the deity Girija. And Krishna is helping Rukmini climb onto his chariot slowly, not abruptly. There's another nice painting, the deity in the background. And off they go. Now, it doesn't show in this painting where all the princes and soldiers are. That's coming shortly. Another beautiful painting of the same celebrated event. This we heard yesterday, Prabhupada's explanation of there's different types of marriages. The common one is the parents of the bride and the parents of the groom make an arrangement and a marriage is arranged. But another is this type. And it's interesting. It's called the Rakshasa marriage. So that's what Krishna is doing. He then proceeded slowly, without fear, taking Rukmini away exactly as a lion takes a deer from the midst of jackals. Now look in the background. There's elephants and soldiers on top of the elephants, and in the background there are kings standing watching all of this happen. And there's Krishna embracing Rukmini, taking her away. Another BBT painting. There they go in their chariot. Behind them, there are horses and charioteers following, and in the distance, that's the city. Jarasandha, who had previously been defeated many times by Krishna, began to roar. Now he was defeated 17 times, so badly and so humiliatingly that Krishna annihilated all of his soldiers and all of the horses and everything except for one person standing on the battlefield 17 times. The 18th time, we heard already, Krishna ran. So he has a lot of enmity. His daughter's husband, Kamsa, was killed by Krishna. And he's been humiliated by Krishna. Now here comes Krishna stealing Rukmini, and he's there to prevent that from happening. How is this? Krishna is taking Rukmini away from us without any opposition? What is the use of our being chivalrous fighters, my dear princes? Just look. We are losing our reputation by this action. It is just like a jackal's taking booty from a lion. No, it's the other way around. But that's how material consciousness works. Get it just backwards. Pride and envy and anger. These are the characteristics of materialistic person, particularly demoniac materialistic persons. A little pause here. I'm going to be, during the Memorial Day weekend, coming up at the end of this month, I'm going to be a participant with others in my seminar is going to be the topics of Raghunath Das Goswami and how to achieve spontaneous loving attraction for Krishna. There's a lot of detail. But the very first verse, he speaks of a prerequisite, and that is becoming free from pride. And without, say it negatively, without becoming free from pride, it's not possible to make spiritual progress of any kind. And in this world, pride is a companion of every living entity, along with the misconception of the body as the self. That's the I conception, aham, false ego, comes mama, mine, and pride arises, it's in the mind category, I and mine. What's mine? That which comes from me. It's mine. And one is proud. I'll tell a little Prabhupada story. I like this one. Prabhupada was born and grew up in Calcutta, and his father was a devotee. And just like you have nice deities of Jagannath, so Prabhupada, his father took him regularly to Jagannath Rath Yatra. And at that time, there were trains. So they were going by train from Calcutta to Puri. And trains in India, as you all know, they're stopped, but sometimes they stop at a platform, and there's a longer halt, and they unload and load luggage or freight or whatever it is, and then they move on. It was one of those stops. Prabhupada got down with his father to walk around the platform. And he described this in one lecture. He saw a very poor couple laying out their worldly possessions. Their worldly possessions were discarded pieces of wood that they had wrapped up in a burlap bag of some kind. So they were busy sorting through their possessions. They're moving one piece over here, then another piece by its side, and they're accounting their worldly possessions. And Prabhupada said, from that experience I could understand even a pauper is proud of his penny. Little boy. Even a pauper is proud of his penny. So pride is part of the baggage of a bodily conception. As long as one has a bodily conception, pride is going to be there. Pride will not go away. Even if one tries or wishes to be or is more in the direction of humble, but as long as bodily conception is there, then pride is there. What to speak of persons who are immersed in the bodily conception. So that was the situation with Jarasandha. And from pride comes so many corollaries, pride and envy and anger. The root of these feelings, false ego. What is our need that we need to focus on when such feelings come up in ourselves? The standard message throughout the Bhagavatam, I'll refer to two places. One is in relation to Dhruva. In fact, that's where I got this nice image from the Dhruva story. He was angry at his stepmother because he was insulted. His pride was bashed. And he was expecting something, and he got something else. He got really harsh treatment. And the harsh treatment, the foundation for it was the bodily conception. You didn't take birth from my womb. And so you can't sit on your father's lap. You won't be able to, although she was defying the codes of the Vedas. The eldest son will become the next king. You're not going to sit on the lap of your father. You're not going to sit on the throne of your father. You're going to have to die. And then you can take birth again from my womb. And then you can sit on the lap of your father. That was what she said. She was proud and foolish. And Dhruva, it triggered his emotions. He was feeling really angry. He wanted to retaliate. Oh, in a Kshatriya manner, I'll show her. So what to do when such emotions arise? The advice given by his mother and the advice given by Narada, Dhruva was unable to perform. So his Tivra Bhakti was the solution. It's very strong devotional service. Life has its irritations and unpleasant experiences and dealings and so forth. It's just the nature of the place. It's not going to stop because you become a nice person. It's just the nature of the place. So the beginning, what to do? Well, the need is, we want to be respected. Well, if you have a need like that, then you're going to get triggered because sometimes there's honor and sometimes there's dishonor. So you're going to get triggered just because the nature of the place. What we really need is not to be respected. What we really need is access to serving, whether there's an obstacle, apparent obstacle or not. There's no obstacle. There is no obstacle to maintaining a mood for serving Krishna other than what's inside our own makeup. The enemy is us, as they say. So here's another nice painting. Soldiers are being falling to one side and the other side, and there's Rukmini's companions in the background. There's so many soldiers ready to do battle. It's a celebrated event, so lots of depictions of this event. There's Rukmini getting onto the chariot. The horse is ready to go. Determined to defeat Krishna and recapture Rukmini from his custody, Jarasandha and his companions fought with Krishna's army as severely as possible. Rukmini looked at Krishna with fear-stricken eyes. In response, the Lord laughed and assured her, "Do not be afraid, beautiful-eyed one. This enemy force is about to be destroyed by your soldiers." Your soldiers means his soldiers, because now they're together. So what's his is hers. See, there's so many nice paintings. In the background on the left side, that's the temple, the Girija temple. And then there's soldiers following behind. Krishna has a chariot driver, and big battle scene about to happen. Balaram to the rescue. Lord Balaram and the other heroes then began to annihilate the opposing army with Naracha arrows. There we see Balaram going at it with other kings. Being subdued by Krishna's army, Jarasandha and other princes, there's too many S's, other princes consoled Shishupal. Here's a battle scene. There you see Balaram on the left side with his club and his plow. Krishna's not in the picture. Just Balaram is smashing people left and right. Rukmi, however, pictured on the left side with his sword in hand, was especially envious of Krishna. He could not bear the fact that Krishna had carried off his sister to marry her in the Rakshasa style. So what did he do? He pursued. Here is a very old painting. He is pursuing Krishna. He's on the right side over there with his shield stretched out and his black sword in the left hand, shield in his left hand and sword in his right hand. As Rukmi attacked him, the Lord shot arrows that broke Rukmi's sword and shield into small pieces. Krishna then took up his own sharp sword and prepared to kill Rukmi. Now this shows in this very center, there's Balaram, and there's Krishna on his chariot. Rukmini prays to Krishna to not slay her brother. Krishna bound him up and was going to chop his head. Lord Krishna tied up the evildoer with a strip of cloth. He then proceeded to disfigure Rukmi by comically shaving him, leaving parts of his mustache and hair. Now this was due to the intervention of Balaram, right? Balaram reprimanded him, "You can't do this. He's your brother-in-law." And then so Krishna accepted the reprimand of his brother, and by humiliating Rukmi this way, he was defeated. There we see at the bottom, he is captured and tied up. Here comes Balaram on the scene. Omniscient Balaram knew that Rukmi was the guilty party, but to encourage the lamenting Rukmini, he decided to gently reproach Sri Krishna. This is an abomination, very much contrary to our family tradition. To cut someone's hair and shave his mustache and beard is almost comparable to killing him. Whatever Rukmi might have been, he is now our brother-in-law, a relative of our family, and you should not have put him in such a condition. His purpose is to pacify Rukmini by taking the role of the elder brother and instructing. Then Balaram instructed Rukmini as well that the reactions Rukmi was facing were solely due to his own misdeeds, and Rukmini should not be attached to bodily conceptions. Something that we find about Balaram's character, in many cases, he likes the role of being the mediator. When there's a conflict between one party and another party, he likes being the mediator and calming things down. Although he's very powerful, like when it came to Samba, later, I think while I'm here, we'll hear about Samba. I think we'll have time. Samba wanted to marry the daughter of Duryodhana. So he went to her Swayamvar and he kidnapped her. And big fight. Many generals surrounded him, captured him, put him in jail. When this Narada brought the news, guess what? You've been missing Samba for a whole month, he's in jail. What? Ugrasena, by morning time, gather the entire Yadu army. We'll go smash. This is before the Kurukshetra battle. Balaram said, let me play peacemaker. I'll go. You know I have this relationship with Duryodhana. Let me make peace. So anyway, he tried. Duryodhana was insulted when he heard what he wanted. And then he took necessary steps to bring a solution. So he likes being. Here in this case, he is supporting Rukmini's feeling that my brother has been humiliated, so he's speaking to Krishna in a way that's correcting him. It's making her feeling a little better. And then he speaks to her. You're too much attached to the bodily conception of life. He's getting the result of his misdeeds. It's appropriate. Thus, Balaram reconciled the situation by his moral and ethical instructions to both Rukmini and Krishna. So now, when we're faced with a conflict situation or some kind of uncertainty, what should we do? First of all, you do a little reality check. And if you're not doing so well with your reality check, you can consult persons that have a better touch with reality, like wise senior devotees. And what's the reality of this situation? Oh, intelligent lady, the soul never undergoes contact with or separation from insubstantial material objects because the soul is their very origin and illuminator. Thus, the soul resembles the sun, which neither comes in contact with nor separates from the sense of sight and what is seen. So what that means is we're normally not in touch with reality. We're in touch with illusion or illusory sense of reality. He goes on, as a sleeping person perceives himself the object of sense enjoyment and the fruits of his actions within the illusion of a dream, so one who is unintelligent undergoes material existence. So he's advising her, step out of material existence and come to reality. What are some examples of illusory ideas that we have about ourselves? Too many to list, right? What are some practical ways to remind ourselves of our reality? He goes on, therefore, with transcendental knowledge, dispel the grief that is weakening and confounding your mind. Please resume your natural mood. Oh, princess of the pristine smile. So, step back, do a reality check. What's really going on? Check in with the spiritual conceptions of self, and then how to act with the spiritual conception. And the temporary illusion starts to dissipate, at least its hold on you. After all of this takes place, here's a nice scene where Krishna is being honored. Now these paintings we've seen earlier. The fellow on the right is one, and in the red, I guess, kurta, and an interesting looking little hat. That's one of the Brahmana or ministers, and Krishna is being worshipped. Rukmini offers Krishna a garland, and formal wedding arrangements are made, and there they are, entering into Dwarka to live happily ever after. Nice paintings. So this is the final slide. Determination of a devotee meets determination of Krishna despite difficulties on the path. And that illustration on the left side, that's Rukmini's letter. Or at least it's an artist's depiction of Rukmini's letter to Krishna. Now just hearing the pastimes of Krishna, just refresh our memory or remind ourselves, there's potencies. There's potencies to cleanse and potencies to attract. The material conceptions are very strong, and so it's easier than simply hearing philosophy to hear the philosophy expressed through the medium of a story. Or when Krishna performs his pastimes, he's attracting the hearts and the minds, which is the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of all the Vedas. Just listening to Prabhupada describing this in 1966 in New York to a completely new audience, where he was describing the how the Vedas are originally from one, the Yajurveda divided into four, etc., how they're structured. And that he's saying, regardless of whether it's the Karma Kanda or Jnana Kanda section of the Vedas, the purpose of them all is to take shelter of Krishna. The goal of all the Vedas is to take shelter of Krishna, to become attracted to Krishna, to know Krishna. So all those other preliminaries that may be less discernible, they reach their maturity and perfection in the Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's the commentary on the summary of all the Vedas, the Vedanta Sutra. So the essence is found in Srimad Bhagavatam. And one who has become cleansed by hearing, and their attraction for serving Krishna awakened by that hearing, that's the goal. One has the means to reach the goal is best fulfilled this way. Just hearing Srimad Bhagavatam nicely, remembering Krishna, trying to understand, especially through the commentaries, to understand Krishna. And that's what our acharyas are doing through the medium of their commentary, is to help us get a clearer picture, a better understanding, a deeper understanding of the personality of Godhead and his different features, just like what Rukmini said was the result of hearing from Narada. Hearing of the beauty of Krishna and the qualities of Krishna. That was it. I've now decided you're the person I want to marry, and no one else. Or you're the person who I want to give myself to. So the ekanta bhakta, the position of unalloyed devotion to one Supreme Person, is the door is opened or is enhanced by hearing the wonderful qualities and pastimes and characteristics and loving exchanges that Krishna has. And if you like adventure, Srimad Bhagavatam, filled with adventure. You know how it's going to come out because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but how it gets there is very interesting. It's sometimes described that the movements of love between Krishna and his devotees, or lover and beloved, certainly in Braja, is like the movements of a snake. It's not a nice word to think of, but when a snake moves from point A to point B, it doesn't go in a straight line. Similarly, the pastimes of loving exchange between Krishna and his devotees doesn't move in a straight line. It goes this way and then goes that way and goes this way and goes that way. But you know how it's going to end up. As it says here, the determination of devotee meets the determination of Krishna despite difficulties in the path. But the journey getting there is a big adventure. It can be like that in our lives. The variable in our case is how much do we desire? And it goes up and down. How much do we desire to be restored in our relationship with Krishna? But for sure, the path of spiritual life is a big adventure. And who knows what's next? So let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I was reading the other day the pastime when Uddhava goes to Vrindavan to deliver the message to the gopis. And I was just reading that section when Radharani, she chastises the bee. I mean, first she chastises the bee, then she becomes nice to the bee. And this is probably more of a comment or observation, but comparing this to Rukmini's mood, it seems to be Rukmini's mood sounds more submissive, at least.
Oh yeah.
At least in...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Here's some detail. There's amongst the gopis and amongst Krishna's queens, there are those that they're called right wing and left wing. Those that are very submissive, and Rukmini is the extreme, very submissive. And Satyabhama is on the other side. She's very feisty. And, apparently not submissive, but she does what she does because she knows it's pleasing to Krishna. She doesn't because she's contrary by nature. She's pleasing Krishna consciously, and that's her nature. She pleases Krishna in a way that looks like she's not pleasing Krishna. And then Krishna exchanges with her in a way that looks like he's not pleased with her, but he's pleased with her. So Rukmini is in the submissive side. It's coming up. We're going to, when Krishna's teasing her, she faints. And he glorifies her. Just see. Your love for me is unparalleled. But it doesn't mean that Satyabhama doesn't have unparalleled love also. It's just of a different type. And then there's the whole spectrum. It's not just extremes. There's the whole spectrum. Because Krishna is full. And the loving exchanges with Krishna are every wavelength in the spectrum of loving exchange. And he enjoys variety. Not only the submission of Rukmini, and not only the feistiness of Satyabhama, the same amongst the gopis, right wing and left wing gopis. And Krishna has special liking for the left wing, the seemingly challenging. But the challenging is entirely arising out of love. Sometimes, not always, sometimes knowing that by saying something challenging, Krishna is going to like it. As opposed to simply being submissive. So, when love is very strong, those things can go on. And those that are not in that loving relationship can't understand it. Because it looks like, unpleasant exchanges. But for those who understand the love, then it's just part of, the sweetness of that love, the variegatedness and the intensity of the love. When Mother Yasoda chastises Krishna, that's wonderful. He likes. It's intimate. It's a transcendental and profound mystery of how Krishna is liking being scolded, or being criticized, or being called names. It's not, he likes being called names. He likes the love from which that behavior is coming. And he knows the difference between when it's malice and when it's love.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
So we as practicing bhaktas, we try to become the servant of the servant. We try to become servants, at least for the beginning stage. We try to be servants. So do we get more? Is Rukmini's mood is more kind of? Can we identify? Of course, we can never imitate Rukmini, but as her mood, can we identify with her mood better as far as serving the Lord in one sense, or not
When
necessarily?
you say better, it's just not, that better means qualitatively, absolutely. Perhaps that's what it means. But everything depends upon the orientation of love that you have for Krishna. Whether this is better or that's better.
Thank you.
I mean, it's commonly spoken of in these terms. Amongst Chandravali's, she's the right-wing gopi group, the leader of the right-wing gopi group. And her associates are fastidiously loyal to her. And Radharani's associates are fastidiously loyal to Radharani. And then they say things to each other, from one group member to another group member, etc., etc. It sounds like, uncivilized. Not what cultured people do, but it's an expression of their loyalty to the head of their group, which is, the material side is material, and the spiritual side is spiritual. And that particular type of mood, they have affinity, profound affinity for a particular mood.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I have 3 questions. The first one is a curiosity question.
First one is?
The curiosity question. Like I'm curious.
Okay.
Why Brahmana was chosen to send the message?
Oh, that's standard. They're
So-
trustworthy. They're confidential and trustworthy. They don't tell anybody. And they have privileges to go where other persons may not have privileges to go because they're Brahmana. It's finding a trustworthy Brahmana. And they're fine.
Thank you, Maharaj. The next question is about the pride. Maharaj, you mentioned that without getting free from pride, it'll be difficult to make a spiritual progress.
Yes.
And also the root cause for the pride is false ego, the I and mine conception.
Yes.
So at my level, I may think that I don't have pride, but subtle level, I may have, I have pride
Yes.
about material accomplishment or spiritual accomplishment.
Yes. Lesser or greater, but some.
But the I and the bodily conception it's very difficult, and
Yeah.
it's the last thing to go on
Yeah.
the false ego.
Yeah.
So at my level, what are the small or simple steps that I can do to get rid of that pride?
What's a small step you can take to get rid of pride? That's your question? Serve. Amanina manadena. Kirtaniya sadhari. That's what you can do. That's very powerful. It's Lord Chaitanya's instruction. You take it to heart. Try to follow it. Respect others without expectation of respect in return. That's the hardest one, because when we respect others, we have an expectation. And when we don't get what we're expecting, we get triggered. So how does that cultivated? You serve. And try to serve, try to learn to serve without expectation means for the pleasure of Krishna. That's without, it can be this or that. And in this world, it's going to be sometimes this and sometimes that. It's just the way it is. Just shrug your shoulders, that's the way it is. Sometimes this and sometimes that. But I'm not going to change my orientation because it's sometimes this and sometimes that. So without material motive and without material obstacle. So you strive for that kind of service. And you'll find where your contaminations are real fast. Then you just okay, that's an interesting one. And so let me not get locked into that interesting one. Let me keep going. Let's cultivate bhakti. It's on the strength of bhakti you can be effective. And what bhakti, the essence of bhakti is, Krishna is to be pleased.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. The next question about the determination of the devotee meets the determination of Krishna.
Isn't that nice?
So my understanding is the determination of Krishna means it's his mercy, right, Guru Maharaj?
Well, you're equating the determination of Krishna with his mercy. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. Because His mercy is always
Why
there.
not? Krishna is always merciful. But Krishna will not interfere. He won't manifest mercifulness in a way that the recipient of his mercy won't be able to take it. Supposing somebody's a thief, and they pray to God, please help me steal. So he's not going to interfere. He'll prompt from within. Don't go right now, someone's coming. Okay, now they've left, go ahead. So he's reciprocating not for the sake of having the person achieve purity or his direct communion. He's reciprocating according to their conditioning. All the while, externally and internally, prompting purity. So it takes some time for us to get the prompt right and stay with it. It's good. Therefore, bhakti is a sort of cultivation, Prabhupada writes.
Guru Maharaj, can I ask one more question? So in case of Rukmini, his brother Rukmi was an obstacle.
He was what?
He was an obstacle.
Oh, yeah.
But she was very courageous. She was able to come out of it.
She's a hero, uh-huh.
But in our case, there may be some obstacle in the form of relationship and different things, impediments.
We can't imitate Rukmini. So then, according to your position, and according to the nature of your relationship with Krishna, and according to the obstacle, you have to consider, brainstorm some options, and move along the path that makes sense. But staying steadfast to one's determination to reach Krishna, that's the starting point.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I have a question on reality and acceptance.
Reality and acceptance.
Acceptance.
Okay, that's a good one.
So when you say about Leela, on the Leela, there was a demon, Bagasura was been trying to kill Krishna, and he is accepting that he can go into his mouth, right?
He's accepting.
Krishna is accepting that he can go up to his mouth.
This mark?
Up to his peak mouth, that his mouth.
Oh.
So in what should in reality we need to consider? So when all the demigods have been seeing that, picturizing that what could be happen, and Balaram was also seeing that what could happen next. So from a reality, what should we consider? That what Krishna is trying to say a message for us in that situation.
I'm not clear what you're asking.
Okay.
I hope you are. I'm not.
So, let me
Say it
put my
differently.
questions like this.
Huh?
Let me reframe my question.
Yes, that's
So-
good. That's what I'm asking for.
So, when Bagasura came forward to kill Krishna,
Banasura.
Bakasura.
Bakasura. Okay.
So, he is trying to kill Krishna.
Yeah.
That's the objective of his goal.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Krishna is accepting up to his peak, where he can go, and he cannot go up to his next to his throat, right? So he was staying on his mouth.
Yeah.
And then at the time, his friend is getting fined, and Balaram is also getting shocked, and what's going to happen next? And all the demigods were watching. So what is the acceptance there? What he is trying to say to all the who is watching that incident?
What's Krishna saying
Trying to
the
say to
others,
all the others.
demigods and
Mhm.
Balaram
Yeah.
and the other cowherd boys?
Yeah.
What's he trying to say?
We know that he is a supreme, right?
He's not trying. Not exactly that he's trying to say something. He's stimulating an emotion. a transcendental emotion. For those who are attached to him, Balaram, his friends, and the demigods, they're attached to him in different ways, in different degrees. So what he's doing is he's stimulating a particular emotion. And it's not all the time that Krishna does that particular, I'm in danger, help,
Right.
or kind of thing. I'm helpless, help me. It's rare. But it's an emotion that his purpose is stimulating emotion.
So don't put too much emotions on the body. Is that what we need to take?
No, I mean, in transcendence, one is not in the bodily conception. Balaram's anxiety was not a bodily conception anxiety. It was a transcendental anxiety. Krishna was nonetheless stimulating, not playing upon his bodily conception because he didn't have, but in danger and at risk and who knows what, as if, this is Yogamaya, as if he could be finished by this baka. So it's the stimulation of love, of varieties of love. And that's what Krishna does all the time with his devotees. He stimulates love of different, and then it keeps flowing like a river, keeps flowing and flowing and flowing. And sometimes the waves are up and sometimes they're down, sometimes they're hitting other waves. And that's the flow of loving exchange. That's what Krishna's doing with his devotees. Now, I don't know if that's answering your question.
I know it's answered my question. So you keep continuous. I take this in this way. So you keep continuous to do what you want to do as a service. Don't put up your thoughts or don't put your stress. But you continue your service, then
Yeah.
the end of your love will come to true.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I take that as an answer.
Okay. There's a nice verse that says what you said. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojataha Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahaitukam. The process of bhakti simultaneously gives rise to knowledge and detachment. And there's nothing material that can check that. There's nothing material that can start it. The platform of contentment isn't created by something material or checked by something material. The platform of contentment is being connected, being in a loving relationship with the Supreme. But it's not created or destroyed by anything material, and it has as its characteristic, there's detachment from other things. It appears when Krishna is in the mouth of Baka, but it's a transcendental, it doesn't check love. It amplifies and diversifies. And then Krishna is released. And they go and embrace Krishna. While he's battling Baka, they have their sticks and they're whacking Baka. They don't need to whack Baka. Krishna doesn't need their help, but they want to. And that's not what finishes him. I like the example of waves in a river. They're very fluid by nature. It's sometimes and sometimes and sometimes, and it keeps changing and sometimes. But one thing is, the river keeps flowing. The exchange of love in the spiritual realm it doesn't stop, and filled with variety. And in the next moment, it's something else. And the next moment, it's something else, and then something else, and something else. And it keeps flowing. My mind is going to how the obstacle of Mother Desoda thinking my son has eaten dirt. And her argument is, this is your brother, Balaram. You're not going to lie. And these are your friends. They're not going to lie. You said they're liars.
Both.
So, all right, let me see. Open your mouth.
Thank you.
So then when she sees what she sees, there's like verse after verse after verse. She goes through a whole series of changes, emotional changes in response to what she's seeing. She's doubting herself. She, it just keeps moving. And it finally takes rest in whatever he is. He's my son, I have to feed him. That's the baseline. And then there's waves. And that's transcendental emotion. It's the nature of transcendental emotion. And it may look like this, and then in a moment it looks like that, and then another moment is something else, and then something else. And what's reality? Is it this, or is it that, or is it something else? The reality is it's her loving relationship with Krishna, and Krishna is stimulating her loving feelings. That's the reality.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Others? Online, anything?
There is no online question, Maharaj.
Okay. Looks like we're finished. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Maharaj, something.